So now, welcome to episode 2 of LingCast. And you're like, well, what is LingCast? LingCast is a podcast that is dedicated to everything linguistically. Brought today Lelani, Sánchez de Armijo, and I'm your host, Ruben Díaz, coming to you here from the Northeast. And we're going to ask her a couple of questions to better prepare you and better inform you of what is this stuff like? What is it? What's the profession like? So we're going to ask her. I'm going to start by asking her. I know, number one, that she is a chemical engineer by trade, by education. She is also originally from Mexico. So that's also, that's a very different perspective. You started off as a chemical engineer, then you became a certified teacher, and now you are teaching and you are working as a community and educational interpreter. So tell us a little bit about your background and, how did you get from chemical engineer to interpretation? I mean, that seems like a very, that doesn't seem like a very linear path. So tell us a little bit about how that happened.
Well, I'm a chemical engineering, not by choice,
Okay.
but by necessity,
Okay.
because I wanted to be a teacher since I was very young. But unfortunately, in Mexico, it's a very sought after career path.
Okay.
And there's not that many opportunities for students to become teachers,
Okay.
because a lot of students want to be teachers, which is the opposite.
That's very different. Yeah,
happens
that's
here.
Very different in here.
Right? But still, what I've learned is that you have to have definitely a desire to help others. So in chemical engineering, I mean, I went through 5 years of my life learning a lot of science and math, and I love it. I love it. But a practicality of it, it was really hard here in the United States.
Okay.
First and foremost, because when I married my husband, him being military, we had to move everywhere. So I could not actually take the profession with me everywhere I went.
Wow. Okay, I didn't even think about that. So the opportunities that we're very limited.
Very limited opportunities.
As available.
Right.
All over the country.
No,
right?
No.
You were bound by where you were moving to.
Right. And then, moving every 2-3 years, it's like, okay, I'm barely getting to know the area. I'm barely getting a job, and now we have to move again. Back up and go. So with those challenges, came my desire to pick up education again. Okay. Because I figure that is actually a job that I can move with. Right. And I love education. I love making a difference in my community. My kids were little, so I found ways to continue my own education, not in engineering anymore. Like I set that aside for years. And I started actually studying childhood psychology, educational psychology, nutrition for children, because I had my very own children, how to take care of a child, actually, first aid, and I also learned a lot of regulations. Okay. Between states and states, and that broadened my perspective about laws and how education is seen here in the United States, and sparked my desire to actually be active in the community and pursue education as a higher level here.
How did so 2 questions. How is that comparison? I mean, you mentioned a little bit about it. Okay, teachers are looked on as it's a valued profession, versus here that you didn't see that. Mm-hmm. And how were you able to not allow that to squelch, to sort of say, this is too hard. Like, mm-hmm. I don't want to do that here. Mm-hmm. They're not valuing, I'm not being valued, mm-hmm. with the education that I have. You're almost sort of sidetracked. Mm-hmm. How did you not allow that to really affect, like, you just kept evolving into, mm-hmm. you kept going into something? How did you not let that, like, literally squash you and say, okay, I'm just gonna just
Yeah.
not do whatever.
Right.
I
had those moments.
Okay.
I had those moments where I actually questioned myself because, there's one is a cultural shock.
Okay.
So it's a cultural shock because you cannot believe that a country that is one of the most powerful countries in the world can not have that high of a value for educators. So that was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm coming from a third world country where this is so valuable, right? And coming to a country where there's more power, and that was a cultural shock. uh, However, what I learned as I started educating myself is not so the importance of making money, but the importance of making a difference
Okay.
in children, which at that time mine were very little.
Okay.
And not only did I wanted to make a difference in my own children, I wanted to promote impact on others. And I have always been I have a soft spot for uh, advocacy, and I'm not a public speaker, so you will never see me in rallies or anything like that. But I always focus on the task at hand. This job is very, very important.
Like, as we began to take this course, and you began to see that there are differences, you became with between community and educational interpretation and healthcare and medical interpretation. What? Tell me some things that you have learned, or things that you become aware, in which you feel that you're better. I mean, first of all, do you feel that you're better prepared by taking a course like this to make that transition from community educational interpreter to medical interpreter? So, do you feel that way? And if you do, tell me some things that you have picked up and you have learned from the course about the profession that you might feel have better prepared you to make that transition.
Yeah, so it's been great, the opportunity that we have got with the University of Central Florida in the healthcare Hispanic serving healthcare professionals certificate that we're in. It's been wonderful, and it has definitely broadened my perspective um, about many issues that I was perhaps unaware of, that our Hispanic community was facing. I saw it. I saw some of the like case studies that we did in this current course that we're taking right now. Some of the case studies that we did, I could definitely make connections to my own life, because, like I said, I there was a disconnect in the language when I first moved to the U.S. Now that I have been helping parents, and students alike uh, make the language connection, it's I think about how I felt, in my experience when I first got to this country, and I knew English.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now some of these students don't know English. Their English proficiency, their is what we call LEP, which is low English proficiency.
Right.
So their English proficiency might be zero.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's an interesting
And
comment.
it comes with, we have students from all kinds of backgrounds,
Right.
all kinds of cultures, worldly individuals. Some have gone through tremendous amount of trauma. Some have different needs. Some have not.
Okay.
But that's how I feel that I can serve them better, and how the classes that we have taken in the Hispanic serving healthcare providers classes have helped me to better serve them, but also make me more aware of what the medical needs of my community are, and how I can be better advocate for our community by helping them bridge that gap between the language barrier and in the medical field. Because the outcomes of a bad medical experience can be catastrophical,
Catastrophic.
catastrophic,
Catastrophic. Yeah.
catastrophic covenant. Uh, they can be catastrophic,
Right.
and it can affect a person's health. I
Right.
mean, major ways. So that's why I've been taking these classes,
Okay.
and they have definitely better prepared me. Not only have educated me to be more aware, but to use also the language as a tool
Okay.
to
Okay.
improve a person's health outcomes.
Okay. Um, have you learned anything about the profession specifically, as you're doing a different side of it,
Mm-hmm.
but that's specific to the medical interpreting side? Have you learned anything that you were like, oh wow, I didn't know that, and
Yes.
and now you are more aware,
Mm-hmm.
specifically in healthcare interpretation, right? The medical
Mm-hmm.
interpretation that you really didn't know. Are there any things that you learned that
Yes.
that were presented? I'll speak specifically about this course,
Mm-hmm.
or the program in general, that you feel are like, oh wow, I didn't know that,
Mm-hmm.
and now that I know that,
Mm-hmm.
it changes sort of your perspective. Because
Yeah.
then I want to ask a follow-up question
Mm-hmm.
after that, as to, well, I'll let you answer that, and then I have a question.
Okay.
I have a follow-up
So
question.
one things that have changed my perspective after this course is I have become more culturally aware. In
Okay.
education, we call this a cultural responsible educator, which is when we are knowledgeable of the cultures that we have in the classroom.
Okay.
And not only that, we are sensitive to the cultures that we have in the classroom. We saw a case in this course that we are taking right now about Syrian refugees in Canada.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
that case really made me think, because in our own culture, which is many cultures in one,
Right.
one
Right.
might say, oh, they speak Spanish is the same thing. No, 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 no. It's
It's very
it's like
broad.
it's like an
Very broad.
onion. There's layers
Yeah.
and layers and layers. We have many subcultures within our culture, but I started thinking about my own culture, right? Being Hispanic, being Mexican, and I'm like, okay, so people, the Syrian refugees, they were Muslims, and they're trying to get these interpreters to help them, overcome language barriers in Canada. That was the case that we saw. And they're trying to do physicals, right, on the women. And women are not, to be with other men.
Oh, male doctors.
Right,
Yeah,
correct.
male doctors. Right.
So that was a cultural thing that people were not aware of. So there was a lot of refutal. They didn't want to
Right. They
do
were
that,
refusing care.
refusing care
Right.
because of their cultural and
Their
religious
faith.
belief.
Yeah. Their faith.
So that really marked me, because coming from a culture in Mexico where some may say, oh, there's a lot of machismo in Mexico, but I will say that's relative. But there are still little places in our countries where that type of mentality and that culture still persists, not because of a religious belief,
Right.
but because that's the culture that it is. That the woman is not to undress in front of anybody, like other than the rightful husband, right? Or the woman.
That's so traditional, by the way.
Yes, the wife cannot get the breast exams because of cultural beliefs, things of that sort. There's people that have to dress a particular way because of cultural beliefs. So that definitely, like, I was like, yeah, if you don't have that cultural connection and you are serving this person, you will not know if you're actually doing the right job.
Okay.
Because you're not attuned with the culture.
I was born and raised in Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
I will not go
Mm-hmm.
to interpret a gynecological appointment.
Mm-hmm.
I refuse.
Mm-hmm.
Not because I can't,
Right.
and not because I don't know the terminology,
Mm-hmm.
and not because it bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
I can go interpret anywhere, but I'm trying to be conscious as to I don't know where the patient is from.
Mm-hmm.
If she's from another, what country, what Spanish speaking countries. So I refuse those
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want to get to a position or an assignment or an interaction in which I'm interacting with a female patient who's uncomfortable, right?
Correct.
So even though I'm from, the
Mm-hmm.
metropolitan area in San Juan,
Mm-hmm.
in Puerto Rico, I don't do it.
Right.
It's not because I'm an old fogey. I mean, I'm old, but older. But that's how I was raised. I
Right.
don't want to make the patient uncomfortable,
Uh-huh.
right? And there is a piece of that. I grew up with my grandparents, so I have that
There.
viejo
Yes.
mentality,
Yes.
right? That
Yes.
mentality like my
It's
grandparents.
there. It's there.
So it's important to understand that
Mm-hmm.
those cultural pieces,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not just. I mean, okay, Latinos. We have 21 different countries
Mm-hmm.
that speak Spanish, but we were just talking about the student
This.
from Mexico,
Yeah.
whose first language is in Spanish.
Mixteco. Yeah.
So just within Mexico, there's a bunch of subcultures.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just, okay, Spanish speakers, and then you got a couple of subcultures. It's, okay, you have Spanish speakers, and then you have Spanish speakers from Mexico.
Huge diversity.
And then you have,
huge diversity.
within Mexico, you have, and I can say that, I can go to Guatemala and say that there's indigenous language. There's either Quiche, or you go to Peru or Bolivia and they speak Quechua. Like, there's all these indigenous language that the average person here in the United States is unaware of.
Correct.
And even Latinos.
Yes, even us.
Even people from other countries that they're like, oh, all Mexicans don't speak Spanish?
No.
No. Or, I mean, you can say even Equatorial Guinea, Guinea Equatorial.
Right.
Right. In Africa.
Yes.
They speak Spanish, but then they speak other African languages.
Right.
Yeah, that's for a lot of people, that's like, really? That's interesting. So my follow-up question to you was, so now that you see, after going through the course, especially there's a couple of there's one particular case study that I'm thinking of, in which we evaluated. Everybody was able to choose different ones, but you were evaluating the interpreter interaction. Now that you have been exposed to those case studies and those things, do you see the interactions, not necessarily yours, with parents and educators and students, but when you see other people serving in those capacities, do you now look at them with a different lens? Do you see them differently now? When, like, tell me a little bit about that. Like, how has being exposed to the information and to the things that we have gone through, how has that changed your lens, your perspective?
Yes. So we saw a case there. I don't know if that's the same one that you're talking about, but there was a case where the medical the doctor was having more of an interaction with the translator rather than with the patient. So now, like, with that lens, putting that lens on, I will say that has changed my perspective, because I'm like, the provider has to be the one speaking to the patient.
Okay.
That's a more personable, thing. And we as interpreters should be like the background story.
Okay.
So there was certain things that I was like, okay, I would not have done that.
Okay.
In the previous podcast, we did talk about your experience with that as well. And recently I've served at a parent teacher conference too, and I applied actually some of the stuff that we have learned, which is taking in consideration like the culture of our Hispanic population.
Okay.
And we have people from Guatemala. I was able to advocate for, I did not interpret because I don't know Portuguese all that well, but I was able to advocate for a Portuguese parent. I had a French Creole parent that I was able to advocate for too.
Wow. Okay.
And that with the perspective that I have now, with that lens, which is not only I am going to serve as a conduit, like you were saying, for formulating the words here in my head and then repeating them in a different language, but also accommodating uh, the culture and reading like the body language of the person, how that person is feeling at that moment, being more considerate of the time constriction,
Okay.
being considerate that because we were on a parent teachers conference and it's like what did you call it, speed dating.
That's funny.
That's exactly what
Yeah,
it
that's
is.
funny.
It's like speed dating,
Yeah, it's
right?
like, okay, yes, you just
Okay,
next,
next,
next. Yep.
next. So that's exactly how I felt. Like this is speed dating.
Yeah, that's
So
funny. That's funny.
what I did was to place myself next to the teacher. I
Right.
got away from the parent and got next to the teacher, and I made the teacher make eye contact with the parent. And as the teacher was talking, I will look at the parent. I will not look at the teacher.
Okay.
And translate simultaneously as well to make it, because it was speed dating.
Right.
So I was
Right.
like, we need to keep it moving or we're going to be here forever.
So you actually have
Right?
been able to use
Mm-hmm.
literally, like
Yes.
literally read the
So
stuff,
I was
become
being a
familiar
language
with it.
broker, right?
Okay.
And I was utilizing the skills that I have learned through knowing all these cases and the tips that I got. And I was like, okay, I would like to do things this way because I saw what I could improve on.
Okay.
And so having that reflection made me apply it on real life, on those interactions on parent teacher conferences. And also, I have been able to serve better my students here in a healthcare way, because I take them to their healthcare, the checkups and the physicals.
Oh,
And
yes, because we
so
have what do we call it?
we have the school-based health center.
School-based health center here at the school. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
That
so I've been able to
you
interact.
actually have been literally
Mm-hmm.
doing medical interpreting
I have
here
been.
at the
Yeah.
school. So
I have been doing the medical interpreting here at the school for whatever is needed because I am a district translator after all. So I have to serve the students on
so
whichever.
you're actually literally code switching. So you're going from
Mm-hmm.
being a conduit to being an advocate to going
Yes.
from educational,
like take the hat and put another hat on.
So you got like 15 hats on at the same time.
In one day.
What are you flipping them? So that's interesting. So you're actually been able to use some of those things that some of the information that you have learned. Absolutely. And actually immediately put it to practice, like in real time.
And also, there was some stuff that we learned in our previous course too, that really changed my perspective of a lot of things and made me a little bit more of a, how can I say it, sensitive.
Okay.
To certain circumstances, whereas before I was more of a judgmental.
Oh, okay.
And now I am more like, could it be that this student is behaving this way because of this social determinant of health?
Wow. Okay.
Because we learned in our previous course also that there's a lot of social determinants of health that influence also the health outcome of some of the people that we serve.
Right.
And like I would have never thought transportation. Oh, this student never comes to class, lazy. Or can the student actually come to class? Where did the student live? Does he have does he have a bike? Does he walk?
If he misses the bus,
can he actually get to school if he misses the bus? Right. Is he within that line of the 1.5 mile? And he needs to walk the 1.5 miles because he's not within the 1.5 mile. He's in 1.6 miles. Right. Then now he needs to walk all that. Or who's going to come bring him? So I started thinking and I started applying all of those concepts like culturally awareness, culturally responsible, language brokering, the utilization of ad hoc translators that we use here, having a multicultural and multilingual environment that we encounter every day, and all those interactions, have definitely like helped me. And now that I am aware and knowledgeable of all these things, it has helped me to better serve the community in different scenarios. So I think that one great thing is to know, that there are social determinants of health that are also part of this scenario that we have here. And we need to be aware of that, as well as being culturally aware of our differences,
Okay.
and the subcultures within as we serve as interpreters.
Okay. So with that in mind, give me one thing that you find to be the most valuable, whether it's a tool, whether it's a concept, whether it's a piece of knowledge that you can say, I have found that this thing, I learned this, and this has helped me. What has been the thing that has helped you the most as you've gone through these courses and you've picked up this information and the interaction with other people in the profession? Because we have nurses, we have students that are going into med school, we have practicing nurses, we have people who are in education, we have a very broad interaction in within the students.
We have
within the course.
our own mental health.
Right, we have all kinds of different nursing and all kinds of stuff. So, what has been that one thing that you feel that out of all the things that you have gleaned from this course or the program itself, what do you feel it has been for you? Like that one thing as of now that you're like, wow, this has been the most useful thing that I have gotten out of this. What would that be for you?
Well, one thing that has marked me is being culturally aware.
Okay.
Coming from Mexico, there's one culture, the Mexican culture.
Okay, fair.
And coming to here, there's also a lot of subcultures. And moving from all over the place, I have seen it. I just have never put a name to it.
Okay.
And working in the educational business, which we encounter healthcare laws. We also have laws, privacy laws like HIPAA, FERPA. Well, HIPAA in medical field, FERPA here in the school. Being culturally aware. So like one will say, read the room. What read the room. Yeah, you do. That's where I got it from. Read the room. You have to be able to read the room. You have to be able to know your audience. Who are you catering to? And how are you going to help this person? In what do they need on their needs? How are you going to provide the best service in a way that at the end of the day, you're actually going to feel that you did something good.
Excellent.
So being culturally aware, and also I have learned that in the healthcare field, as in education, we need to be able to morph and to be in constant, we need to update like computers.
Right.
Every so often we need to be, going to professional development, seeing what's there, evolve. And medical too. Medical, there's certain things that we don't do anymore in the medical field. And there's other things now, with the simulations that they're doing in Florida, for example. Maybe people didn't have those things before, now it's so important because it puts you in that position, like the class that we're taking right now.
Right.
The simulation course that we're taking right now too.
That's coming. The one that's coming.
Yeah, see. So it's very, very. It has helped me a lot. I have grown. I think that I have grown as an individual because now I see that with a different lens, and Excellent. It has made me grow also as a professional. So I think overall it's been a great experience.
All right, that's awesome. So there you have it. This is a perspective from somebody who's actually going through a professional transition or evolving as a professional, and I think that that's important. And we've had that discussion in the previous episode and in this one, and I think that's really important. And I appreciate your candor. I appreciate you sharing your experience. And with that, to the next episode, we thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you for having me.